would like to talk today about a special personality. The personality of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham. Eliezer, you may ask yourself, well known in the Torah as Damascus Eliezer? No, not Eliezer from Damascus. He's called Damascus Eliezer. Yes, we would need to figure out what that means. But you would say to yourself, what is there to say about Eliezer? After all, he's barely mentioned in the Torah. His personality emerges very quickly as a servant, and he disappears just as fast. His only big mission that is mentioned is this wonderful assignment that he has to go find Rivka as a wife for Yitzchak. And even in that story, he's never actually called by name. He is once over and over and over again merely called the Eved, the servant. Only once throughout the whole story is he called Ha'ish, the man. And yet, our sages tell us that the actions of the servants are even nicer than the talk and discussion of the forefathers. It is an amazing thing to think that a servant could fill such an important role in our national development. A slave who is a Canaanite, who was never introduced to us in any proper way in the Torah, plays such an important role and is entrusted with the assignment of finding a wife to the heir of Abraham, a wife for Yitzchak, a woman that will be the builder of the Jewish people. Midrashic literature introduces fascinating things about Eliezer, but in order to properly understand that, we need to take a little bit of a walk backwards and examine a very strange story that appears in the Torah in the earlier days of Abraham's career. It is a story that seemingly has absolutely nothing to do with Jewish history. It is so remotely connected to our history that one must ask, why does the Torah waste an entire chapter describing in such great detail a story that has absolutely nothing to do with us, which really is not necessary in order to understand the key point of the story that does relate to us? I am talking about the war of the 4 versus 5 kings. This war that could be best depicted as a world war in those days' terms. The Torah tells us how one side enslaved the other for nearly 14 years, and how that triggered a big battle against them, how 4 kings bonded together and launched this attack and defeated all 5 kings. And the Torah goes through detailed explanation of each one of the kings and where each battle was fought and how they were defeated and conquered. And in the midst of the battle, it even tells us how they came back in the middle of the battle and they launched a battle again against other neighboring nations. And they conquered and they pillaged it until they reached the city of Sodom. They conquer the entire city of Sodom. They take all of its riches. They took all of its people into captivity. And they leave. And then the Torah adds on the caveat. The caveat is that they also captured Lot and all of his belongings. Lot, reminds us the Torah, as if we didn't know this, is the son of Abraham. He is Abraham's nephew. And then they leave, even though the Torah told us just a sentence ago that they left already. They leave again. This nuance is quite important, as we will see in a few moments. It is at this point that Abraham finds out that his dear nephew was taken into captivity, that he decides that it is time to save him. He takes his entire household, all of his students. The Torah tells us that his students numbered 318. And these 318 students go with Abraham in the middle of the night and launch a counterattack. Yes, Abraham, in a bold, courageous move, with full belief that God will stand with him, launches attack against these 4 fierce kings that just defeated half of the known world. And in a battle unparalleled, he manages to defeat all of these kings and free all of the captives of Sodom and bring them back with him And as he gets towards the boundaries of the city of Shalem, Melchizedek comes out to greet him together with the king of stone who had previously escaped from the battle. And the king of stone says to Abraham, Abraham, all of the people that you have freed are mine. You may keep all of the property that you redeemed. All the property that you liberated is yours. Says Abraham to him, I will not take as much as a shoestring from all of this. I do not want any of it. Only the people that helped me fight, my dear friends, my 3 friends, that came along with my students can take their reward from the spoils. I will not take a penny. It is all yours. I give it all back. Of course, Lot is free and is returned to Avram's home. One must ask, if this was all about going to rescue Lot, why not just tell us? Lot was taken into captivity. Avram launched a counterattack and saved him. Why was it necessary to leave us wondering, how did Avram defeat such a massive army? And the Midrash describes to us that Avram would pick up stones from the ground and throw them, and they would turn into balls of fire. The first bombs were created. Rashi, in a very strange move, gives a very interesting commentary on the description of the students of Abraham leaving his house to the battle. Rashi quotes a Midrash, which is one of those Midrashim that make you scratch your head and say, huh? Why would you say that? Why is it necessary? It is particularly interesting because Rashi, as a commentator, always tries to stick to the interpretation of the simple text, what is called pshat. He tries to give us a simple understanding of the text so this narrative of the Torah flows well and we could understand the intrinsic messages that are held in. Yet here he departs from his regular practice. And on this statement, that Abraham emptied out the 318 students, he says as follows. The word student in this place in the Torah is called chanichav. In modern Hebrew, we use the word chanich to describe a child in a youth movement, one that needs chinuch, one that is reared and educated. Says Rashi, chanichav, this is a chanich, one student. This is Eliezer, domestic Eliezer, the student of Avram that Avram educated and reared, that Abraham taught. That's who he took with him. 318 students? No. He only took one, just Eliezer. You see, says Rashi, if you add up the numerical values of the letters of the name of Eliezer, as you may know, every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a very particular numerical corresponding value. So if you add up these values of the word Eliezer, you will reach the number 318. So, say the sages, it was Eliezer who was worth 318 men that was taken by Abraham, and only the 2 of them by themselves defeated the great armies of these 4 kings. Why? Why tell us such a strange story? What is the point? And perhaps through answering this question, we've been able to answer the greater question. Why tell us the story in the first place? Why do we need to hear about this big battle, about these battling kings that have nothing to do with us or our history, and seemingly contribute nothing to the understanding of the development of the Jewish people? Well, there is another Midrash. It is a Midrash that isn't very well known. It's fairly obscure, but I believe it holds within it a key to understanding this peculiar episode. The Midrash tells us that when Abraham was ready to embark on his journey to the land of Israel, shortly after God commanded him to leave the city of Ur Kasdim, and journey to the land that he will show him, Abraham notified the people of his town that he is leaving. And everyone in his town went out to say farewell. The leaders of Ur Kasdim all came out to give him farewell gifts. not only the regular leaders. Yes, indeed. The king of Ur-Kasdim, Avram's greatest nemesis, Nimrod. Nimrod came as well. You see, Nimrod has a long and speckled history with Abraham. Nimrod is the first king to stand up in humanity to declare, I am not just a king, tells us our sages. Nimrod declared himself a deity. He convinced the people that he has powers far beyond mortal man. And thus he had people worship him. It was Abraham as a young child that stood up to him and said, no, there is only one creator of this world. There is only one God. You are a false idol. And for these accusations, Nimrod challenged him by throwing him into a pit of fire, challenging him to have his God save him. And indeed, when Abraham came out of the pit of fire unscathed, Abraham started gaining many followers. And Nimrod lost a very important theological battle. And here, when Abraham was going on his journey, Nimrod could not be left unheard from. Nimrod could not just allow this great sage to go on his journey without having a final word. But yet, what could he do? Abraham already proved him publicly to be a falsehood. You see, Nimrod never quite gave up his battle and hope to defeat Abraham. So he gives him a unique parting gift, says the Midrash. A Midrash that sends you scratching your head in bewilderment. What does this mean? Says the Midrash that Nimrod granted Abraham his firstborn child as an eternal slave. Yes, Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, the servant that rose to be the greatest contributor to the next generation, was no less than the son of Nimrod. Why would Nimrod do such a thing? Why would Nimrod give his firstborn son as a slave to Abraham? I believe that Nimrod had a perfect plot in his mind. He educated Eliezer. He believed in his strength. And he said to himself, if I was not able to defeat Abraham in the public arena, then indeed I have a good way to defeat him by corrupting his house from the inside. I will send my son into his household to collapse his house one by one from within. And he will be able to corrode and corrupt everything that is good in this house. Abraham accepts this gift because Abraham knew all too well that with the proper guidance, with the proper education, he could convert Eliezer from a cursed Canaanite slave to be a blessed, free man that will make the right choice at the right moment and choose the perfect wife for his son. It is this Eliezer that stands with Abraham at this moment. And from here we reach another small nuance that our sages teach us that open up the door to understanding this great battle of the four kings. You see, the leader of this battle was a king by the name of Amraphel. Come, our sages to say Amraphel is the second name, is Amar Pol, is the name for the king who said to God, you fall down before me. It is no other than Nimrod himself. I believe that the Torah and its nuance of dictating to us that they finished the great battle and left and then went back to capture the son of Lot, the nephew of Abraham. It emphasized that they captured Lot and his monetary wealth and that he is the nephew of Abraham, and then they left. Is there to teach us that the entire battle was designed with this purpose in mind. Nimrod finds out that Lot, the beloved nephew of Abraham, one that our sages teach us looked exactly like Abraham, almost like identical twins, went to live in the corrupt city of Sodom. Says Nimrod, finally, I have him. I have Abraham's Achilles heel. I am going into Sodom. I'm going to capture Sodom, and I'm going to capture Lot so I could parade him in front of the whole world. Show, you see, this is the moral corruption that comes from the house of Abraham. one that cares nothing more about it than his monetary wealth. A moral degenerate. This is what Abraham has become. Abraham replies in the most powerful and potent way. He says to Nimrod, you think you've defeated me? You think you will show the world something? I will show the world the power of the belief in God. I will show the world the unbelievable power this belief has in one's personality and what one can accomplish. All I need to defeat you is your own son. Me and your son, that is it. The two of us by ourselves are able to defeat no matter how big the army, no matter how many armies face us, because God is fighting with us. And thus Avram and Eliezer alone defeat these great armies and free Lot. And then Avram, in a public display of humility and of moral justice, refuses to take a penny from the spoils and lets all of them go. Eliezer, from being a servant, turns into a giant of a man. Damesek Eliezer, tell us Chazal, our sages say Damesek is an abbreviation of Dole Umashke Mitorat Rabo La'acherim. He draws water from the wellspring of his master's genius and teachings, and he uses what he draws to quench the thirst of others, spreading Abraham's Torah to the world. It is this Damesek Eliezer that has the insight to pick Rivka, carefully selecting a matriarch that is full of kindness and wisdom, one that will be able to stand by Yaakov, by Yitzchak, and guide him as he raises their own children in the next step of the journey of the development of the Jewish people. Thus, it is the power of belief, it is the power in the belief of God and the power of the study of Torah that could enrich and raise any person, no matter what depths they came from, to true greatness and true majesty. Thank you all.